said, "This have we found." Know now whether it be thy coat. No. He knew it. Said, "It is my son's coat." Well, beast. Rose up to comfort. He refused to be comforted and said, "For I will go down into the grave to my son mourning." Thus his father wept. See the picture here. Boy's coat, dipped the coat in it, brought it to his dad. Yep. Morning, all the brothers, even the sisters, they stood around, wept with him. Cross. In Matthew chapter 20, New Testament, Matthew chapter 20, verse 5, please. But Jesus called them unto him and said, "You know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them. They that are great exercise authority upon them." Verse 26, "But it shall not be so among you, but whosoever will be great." Everyone say great. "Among you, let him be your minister." Everyone say minister. "And whosoever will be chief." Everyone say chief. "Among you, let him be your servant." Everyone said servant. "Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, to give his life a ransom for many." For a title for this Bible study this afternoon, I would like to ask that you consider the thought, in the field, art, field. Art is field. You may be seated. Jesus suggested to us in Matthew chapter 20, if anybody wants to be great, verse 26, if anyone wants to be great among you, let him be your minister. If anybody wants to be chief among you, let him be your servant. In other words, the economy of God is quite converse from the political arena of man. Man, to be great, you work hard, you climb the ladder of success, you have many people around you ministering to your needs and under your domain, and then we say that is success. Jesus said, no, that's really not great people. That's really not the people that are at the top of the ladder. The people that I look at in my economy, in God's economy, in the economy of the Spirit, he said, those people that I consider great are people that minister. And those people that I consider the CEO, that I consider the president of the incorporation, that I consider the most important, are those that understand service. Now, to understand this, the word servant, and you can just go to the dictionary, this is not some profound revelation, but the word servant is one that serves others, one that performs duties about the person or home of a master or personal employer. That's a servant. Now, servant is one who what? One who serves. The word serve, again, this is not rocket science. It just comes out of the dictionary. The word serve means to be a slave, serve, to be a servant. It means to be favorable, opportune, to be worthy of reliance or trust. That means to serve. So a servant is one who serves. The word service means the occupation or function of serving, the work performed by one who serves. And this is what I want you to hold on to, because this is really the crux of my Bible study this afternoon. The word service means one who serves or makes contribution to the welfare of others. One who serves or makes contribution to the welfare of others. So really what Jesus was saying in Matthew 20, he was saying, do you want to be great? Do you want to be chief? Do you want to be someone that is recognized as important in my eyes or in the service of the kingdom? Then what you need to do for God to call you great, for God to call you important, for God to look at you and say, this is one worthy of promotion to be chief, it needs to be someone who is willing to give themselves to minister, to serve in making contribution to the welfare or the benefit of others. What Jesus was saying, if I could just bring all this to a very simple statement, what Jesus was really saying was, to be great in the kingdom, you have to be looking out for the best interest of others. Nothing more, nothing less. For you to be great in the kingdom of God, you just have to be someone who looks out for the best interest of others. Everyone say others. So I want to talk about two things today. I want to talk about the attitude of a servant, and I want to talk about the actions of a servant. Really, service begins, or ministry begins, or the contribution to the welfare of others begins at the point that needs are met. One can preach, one can teach, one can hold an office, one can be appointed to a position, but never be great in the eyes of God. Now, just because I said I was going to teach today, don't take a nap. It's okay to say amen. In fact, some of you need to say it real often to keep yourself awake. Can I get an amen out of anybody? Okay, thank you. That was for the benefit of your neighbor there that was going to sleep. Let me say it again. For one to be great in the kingdom of God, ministry begins at the point that needs of others are met. So, just by virtue of the fact that you sat on the platform this morning, or by virtue of the fact that you're going to show up at the leadership meeting this evening, or just by virtue of the fact that you teach a lesson or you're in a class, does not mean that God considers you great. What God looks at to decide if you're great or not is, what did you do this week to benefit or to help the welfare of others? The attitude and the actions of a servant. The attitude that motivates your actions is going to determine if your act is out of a spirit of servanthood or servitude. Servanthood or servitude. It doesn't matter what you did. It matters the attitude behind what you did as to whether or not your action is going to be considered of God as that of greatness or that of being achieved. You may have sang a song, you may have taught a lesson, you may sit on the platform, you may be in a position, you may be a leader by appointment in the church, but your attitude behind what you do is going to determine whether or not God says great, whether God says promotion, whether God says chief among them. Did you have an attitude behind what you've done that said, I do this because I want the needs of others to be met? Let's look at a very familiar story in Scripture. If you have a few moments this afternoon, in Luke 10, we find our first scene of this drama begin to unfold. Jesus had been traveling, and he came, according to verse 38 of chapter 10, he entered a certain village where a certain woman lived. We know this lady as Martha, the mother, or the sister of Mary and Lazarus. Note with me in verse 38. It says that when Jesus came to the certain village, a certain woman named Martha received him into her home. Jesus walking into town, Martha comes out and says, Jesus, would you please honor me by coming to my house? Everyone see that word, receive? Martha received him into her house. What was the motive of Martha receiving him into her house? Well, I don't really know. I'm sure perhaps there was pure motives. But watch how scene one of the drama unfolds. Martha had a sister whose name was Mary. And while Martha, the Bible said, was cumbered about much serving, that she came and found Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, and Martha got an attitude. Now that word cumbered there, it doesn't say but Martha was cumbered about with much serving. It says Martha was cumbered about much serving. See that? Martha was cumbered about much serving. That word cumbered means to be dragged down. It means to be distracted by. So Martha is in the kitchen cooking biscuits and gravy and fried chicken or whatever she was doing there, and this act of servanthood, this act of honoring, or this act of ministering to Jesus began to drag her down, and she got distracted by the busyness of what she was doing. And so she came in, and looking for somebody to help her, she found Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus. Martha comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, what's going on here? Do you not see how hard I am working? Do you not see how dragged down I am by preparing this meal? Do you not see how distracted I am by all the good things that I'm doing? Do you not see how busy I am? Do you not see I've got flour all the way up to my elbows? And do you not see the steam coming out of the kitchen? And you have Mary sitting at your feet, and you're not saying anything about it? Now, we know a little bit about what Jesus said, but here's what Jesus could have said. Hey, you're the one that invited me here. God, isn't that what the Bible said? Martha received him. Martha said, hey, Jesus, would you like to come over for lunch today? And Jesus said, oh, well, I don't have any other invitations, not a problem. So Jesus could have said, hey, if you didn't want to fix lunch, you didn't have to invite me. He didn't say that. The Bible doesn't say he said that, but he could have. Now, I'm not suggesting that what Martha was doing was not a good thing. Fixing lunch for Jesus was quite an honorable task. But what happened was, while she was busy in the work, her process went from an attitude of servanthood to servitude. You see, she got an attitude that said, why isn't somebody else in here helping me? Is there anyone that knows anybody that knows somebody, like 3 generations down, that's always committing themselves to things that they never are able to quite finish up, and somebody else has to always come and pick up the pieces for their mess they got themselves into? It's kind of like, you're the one that made this commitment. You're the one that got yourself into it. Now, why are you always trying to get somebody else to come in and clean up your mess? Well, so here we are. Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, and Martha in the kitchen cooking. And ladies and gentlemen, what I want to suggest today is that there needs to be both an attitude and an action behind what you're doing to be honored by God and called as great and making you worthy to be chief. When it is in your hands, but it is not in your heart, it becomes servitude. Let me say it again. When it's in your hands, but it's not in your heart, it becomes servitude. I want to talk to some of you today who are involved in things in the church, and I'll talk to some of you that's not involved that should be later, but I want to tell you, if we ever just get into the mechanics of making a service happen, and if we ever lose the reason behind what we're doing, and if we ever reach a place that it becomes just a job to us, you're gonna go from an attitude of serving into an attitude of servitude, and God is not pleased with an attitude of servitude. What you do's got to first be in your heart before it ever gets in your hands. You got to say, I want to get involved. I want to be involved in ministry. I want to get involved in meeting the needs of others so that God can call me great. And if you get it in your heart before you get it in your hands, it will be servanthood instead of servitude. Here's what happens. Here's what happens. When you have servant's hands, but not a servant's heart, it will always move you through a process of about 7 or 8 things. Watch. The first thing, when you're ministering out of servitude instead of servanthood, you'll first start with a spirit of comparison. Martha said, look at me. Look at Mary. Look how hard I'm working. Look how lazy she is. She started comparing herself. Now, the Bible talks about this comparison thing and said, you're really not wise to compare yourselves with yourselves. God's not going to judge me in relationship to what I do or what I do in relationship to what Brother Medling does. God's going to judge me with what I do in relationship to what my potential is to do. You can't look around and say, well, I'm doing more than they are. Well, if you're a 3-talented man comparing yourself with a 1-talented man, that's not a very smart thing to do. If God gave you 2 talents or 3 talents, He's going to judge you in relationship to your potential. You got to stop comparing yourself. Somebody's got to put blinders on and say, I'm going to the prayer room if nobody else goes. I'm going to raise my hand for fasting commitment if nobody else is going to fast. I'm going to get involved with worship if nobody else gets involved in praise. I'm going to stop comparing myself because comparison comes out of an attitude of servitude. So we start comparing ourselves. And then that comparison leads to an attitude of self-righteousness. Do you see how hard I'm working? Do you see all this flour and biscuit grease all over me? Do you really see how good I am? Come on, somebody say amen here. I'm working, I'm cooking, I'm slaving. Look how much I invest in the church. Look how many ministries I'm involved in. And look at Mary. Self-righteous. Again, God's not going to compare you with how much biscuit grease is on your elbow. God's going to compare you with what is your gift. Self-right. We need to get rid of this self-righteous attitude. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us were sinners saved by grace. Somebody say amen here. Come on, we got to get rid of this self-righteous attitude. You're not better than anybody else in this church. I'm not better than anybody else in this church. In fact, you're not better than anybody except for the grace of God. I am a sinner headed for hell, but Jesus reached down and I got a hold of his hand and allowed him to reach me out or pull me out of the miry clay. You don't have any right to brag about yourself. You need to be. In fact, the Bible talks about being self-righteous. He said self-righteousness is as filthy rags in the eyes of God. When every one of us are just sinners, every one of us are sinners saved by the grace of God. I wish somebody would nudge your neighbor and say amen, and wake up. Then this mental attitude of comparison, this spirit of self-righteousness will lead you into verbal complaining. You see, that comparison and self-righteousness was an internal attitude, but then it starts coming out with complaining. You know what, folks? I'm just sick and tired of all the belly aching and the murmuring and the grumbling and the complaining going on around. We don't have a whole lot of guests here, so that's your problem. You want me to stop preaching like this, start bringing a bunch of sinners. You know what led Israel every time into their besetting sin? Murmuring and complaining and griping and belly aching. Come on, somebody needs to get a hold of your attitude. Anybody remember the Negi jar? Anybody remember the Negi? Brother Alvin came and said to me the other day, Pastor, can I borrow the Negi jar? We need it in Branson. I said, yeah, go get the Negi jar. You know what? We're not going to put a Negi jar back down here again, but I wish somebody would get a hold of your attitude. Understand God's not going to mark anything up to your favor if you're griping and complaining about everything you're doing. You don't like being involved in ministry, get out. You're going to complain and gripe and bellyache because you have to spend 59 cents on a bottle of Elmer's glue for your Wednesday school class. Get out. You're not helping our little kids downstairs when you go in with a self-righteous complaining, griping, belly aching about it's too hot and it's too cold and the music's too loud and it's too soft and I don't like church at this time and why somebody help me preach a little bit here today. I tell you, you're gonna lead to complaining if you've got an attitude of servitude. But number four, it'll move you into an attitude of resentment. Resentment. So you go from comparison, you go to self-righteousness, you go to complaining, and then you start getting a little bit of resentment. Who does this lazy, worthless Mary think she is? In their brown nosing up to Jesus. Well, I'm gonna cook this dinner, but I'm gonna find out where Mary's sat, and I'm gonna spit in her soup. Come on, I'm talking about resentment now. When you got the wrong attitude, you're going to start resenting what you're doing. Come on, somebody say yes. Resentment. Then from resentment it moves into John chapter 11. John chapter 11. Lazarus, Martha's brother, dies. Now watch this. John 11 is really an interesting and a really powerful story. John chapter 11. Lazarus gets sick and Lazarus dies, and so they send for Jesus, and Jesus in verse 6, he didn't even check out of the motel for 2 more days. And Jesus finally gets there. And in fact, it was 4 days. But Jesus, there's a lot of interesting story here. You know, he wasn't real welcome in the city there, and in fact, Judas says, okay, you know, Lazarus is dead. Jesus, are you sure you want to go back to Samaria? You know, that's where they tried to kill you. He said, yeah, I think we'll go back. And so Thomas, doubting Thomas, he said, okay, come on, guys, let's go. We'll just die too. We're not any better than Lazarus. Let's just go. They're going to kill us. If we go to town, they're going to kill us. Jesus stops right outside of town. I don't know why he stopped outside of town. Maybe he wanted to send some undercover agents in to see if, you know, kind of what they do, put out some trial balloons to see if it's going to be okay for him coming in town. He stops outside of town. Now watch this. Here's Martha and Mary. Martha with biscuit grease up to her elbow, and Mary with cramps in her knees from sitting down all the time. And so watch this. They come out. They hear that Jesus has come to town, and he's right outside. We don't know how far, but he's outside the city. And so Martha, as soon as she heard this, verse 20 would suggest that marched straight out to where Jesus was. Martha looks at Jesus. If you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. If thou would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Jesus, did you not get the telegram that I sent you? That Lazarus was sick? Now, Jesus, see this? It's biscuit grease. See this? That's those spots where I got burnt frying your chicken. See that? Did you forget about the mashed taters and gravy? Talking about resentment. Now what? Mary says, you would have been here if you would have came when I told you to come. But you didn't. Now, listen to me, Jesus. I know that the Father will do whatever you tell him to do. Now, what are you going to do about this? Fix it. Is that kind of what she said? What are you going to do about this? Fix it. I'm talking about an attitude. She's standing in front of the Lord. And this resentment is oozing out of her. This attitude is coming out of her. Jesus, why didn't you come when I told you to come? Jesus, do you not remember how much I did for you? Do you not remember how many times you came through town and I allowed you to come into my house and cooked you dinner and let you sleep on our bunk bed? Do you not remember that? Now, Mary was just kind of hanging out inside. And Martha's out there. Oh, I know he's going to rise again in the resurrection, but I'm talking about now. Martha goes up to Mary. Tells Mary, the man. That led to an attitude of jealousy. I know what you're comfortable with here. Jesus came to town. Martha called him Lord. Here's the key. But when she went in with an attitude of resentment and jealousy, hearing Jesus, come on. Martha got some. Call him Lord anymore. Call him Master. Master, the Master. He's a taskmaster. After all this that I've done for him, look at this. He's making me serve him. He's making me do all this stuff. I'm telling you, when you don't have a right attitude about your ministry and what you're doing, it's going to lead you down a spiraling staircase, and you're going to eventually get bitter or resentment, and you're going to get jealous. Just like and jealousy will burnout. Burnout will leave you bitter. Where did it start, Martha? It started back there one day when I come in my heart. But somewhere in the course of all this, I started comparing. I started looking around. I got self-righteous. I got a little negative and complaining. And then I started feeling like this owes me something. I got this resentment in there when I went through a valley and a trial and a difficulty, and Jesus didn't just solve it all real fast. And then I started getting jealous because my brother was being blessed, but I was going through a tough time. And then ministry will lead you. Listen to me, Harvest. If you're only doing ministry out of an attitude of servitude, you're going to eventually burn out. And burnout is almost impossible to ever turn around without a real intervention of God's Spirit. And that's why many people walk out of the back doors of churches in North America, and they're bitter against God, and they're bitter against the church, and they're bitter against the ministry, and they're bitter against people in the church. Where did it start? It started way back there when they had an attitude change. Put on the screen up here, Brother Randy. slope, it will end up where your attitude changes from service to service. Somewhere in the Christian community, people's attitudes have started to change. Does anybody remember what you felt like when you came to an altar and you was bound and you were addicted and you felt hopeless and helpless, but you came to an altar and Jesus picked you up and set you free, and you said, Jesus, I want to serve you. I want to be a servant to you. I've got an attitude of service. But then we get a little bit involved, and we start looking around, and things happen, and we don't always get our way, and our attitudes or our ideas are not always used. And in the Christian community, you know what's wrong with our world today? You know what's wrong with our Christian community today? People has gone through this slippery slope, and they become bitter, and they've got an entitlement mentality. The government owes me, and my parents owe me, and the church owes me, and God owes me, and they've changed the attitude of service to an attitude of service. Say, what do you mean, Pastor? Well, let me. Can you hit the return button up there on the computer, please? Can you hit the return button on the computer, please, and get a second line there? And now, could you please type service there again? Service. Starts with an S. I'm catching them off guard up there. I apologize. Service. I'm preaching. Well, get with it up there. You're giving me an attitude. There it is. No. I want service up there. Already talked about service. I want service up there. Hit the back button. Hit the delete button and type service up there, please. Happen. Volunteer. Can't fire them. It's all right. Just put it back up there. Just type service up there. Starts with an S. Change me, Lord. Change me. I was doing all right a while ago. Just back up. Rose up. Put it back up like it was. S. Type in S. Capital S. Hit the cat button. Hit S. Now, can you hit the return button? Thank you. Now, hit capital S. I want another word up there, guys. Just on the next line, put capital S. You have to type the whole thing in there before you can put it on the screen. Put capital S. There it is. Now put E. No, just right next to that S. We're going to put service up there. Okay, now R. Now capital U. Now S. Would you give them a great big hand, ladies and gentlemen? My dear brother and sister of Harvest Tabernacle, it sounds a whole lot the same, but the meanings are so different. You know, we all started out with service, but there's too many of us now that have an attitude of serve us. Serve me. Serve my ideas. Jesus, don't you know I served you when I made biscuits? Now I want you serving me. Serve us. Serve. Oh, it sounds a whole lot like the same word. You can come to Sunday service and say, serve us. But if the heart is not there before the hands get engaged, it ends up being serve us. Ladies and gentlemen, God has not called you for being served. God has called you to serve. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm supposed to go up there and tell them all that stuff, but it's not near as much fun if they know what I'm doing. Watch this. Can I have about 15 more minutes? That was the hard part. Martha, who had a serve us mentality, came with a jealous, resentful attitude. Mary, the Master's calling for you. Watch. The Bible says that Mary got up and she walked out of town and found where Jesus was. And Mary said, Master, if you would have been here, Lord, if you would have been here, Lazarus would not have died. She said, Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would. Identical word. Her serve us request. Jesus just sent her back to the house. But when Mary got done with her service attitude, Jesus said, take me to where he is. The attitude. Preaching, it's the field. Heart is revealed. It was the same message, but it was two different attitudes that Mary and Martha produced that day. Harvest, I'm calling us to an attitude of service. This church does not owe you. This pastor does not owe you. God does not owe you. You are every good you have has come down to you from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variableness nor shadow of turning. All good and perfect gifts that you have has come to you because God has given you mercy. We cannot afford to go down the slippery slope of changing our mentality from serve us to serve us. You see, not just a matter of money. About 15 more minutes. Jesus said this in Luke chapter 7. Said chapter 7. What Jesus said in Luke chapter 7, said, "But which of you, having a servant plowing or feeding cattle, will say unto him by and by, when he is come in from the field, go and sit down to meat, and will not rather say unto him, make ready, wherewith I may sup, and gird thyself, and what? Serve me till I have eaten and drunken, and afterward thou shalt eat and drink." Doth he think that servant, because he did the things that were commanded of him? I trow not, I think not. So likewise ye, when ye shall have done all those things which are commanded, we are unprofitable servants. We have done that which was our duty to do. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus was saying, if you're a master and you have a servant, and he's went into the field and worked 8 hours plowing and taking care of the cattle, and he comes in hot and sweaty and tired, you don't tell the servant, go and sit down and I'll fix your supper. No, you tell the servant, go wash your hands up and your face up, and you fix my supper up, and when I'm full, then you can eat. Because they're servants. You're paying them to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus Christ is our master. You may work 8 hours on a job, but when that job is over with, you're still not a profitable servant until you have done something to serve back to the master. I want somebody to help me just a minute. We need a fresh baptism of the attitude of service unto the Lord. 150 people under our circle of influence. This church should never be asking for the lack of people that would volunteer to be an attitude or get involved in ministry in the church. It shouldn't be just a handful of us trying to make things happen. You say, oh, I got a job. I come to church on Sunday. Don't ask me to. Jesus said that is the attitude of an unprofitable servant. I'm going to come Sunday, choir, minister to me, preacher, serve me, deacon, serve me. That's an unprofitable servant. But when I walk to those back doors, if I want Jesus to follow me to the graveyard of my need, I've got to fall at his feet. And with an attitude of service unto the Lord, I say, Lord, here is my need. Our attitude that of service. We're living in a world that serves. Anybody here? Teaspoons of hot coffee and McDonald's goes. Peel they took off the market. Somebody somewhere in the world told me the other day, peels they took off the market. So the real case study that I died taking the peels that already had high blood pressure and diabetes, heart trouble in the past, but they took it off, and more people are going to die because the peel's taken off the market than one person that died with the peel. But you know what? He saw an opportunity to make the pharmaceutical industry serve him. And so his family goes to court and becomes a millionaire because our world has an attitude that the world owes them. And the dog, come on, church, somebody help me here. This church don't owe you anything. You owe it to God to come here and give him your best, to come and give him your worship, to come and give him your praise, to come and give him your heart, an attitude of service back to the Lord. I have just a couple more minutes. You know what? It's study. I don't find anywhere where what he did about a lot about love. Here's what he knew. Love your brother. To forgive those that have trespassed against you. If I could get you to have the attitude in the heart, we're a team, brethren. Well, who's preaching? Well, we'll get behind him. Oh, well, we're going to get with it. Guys, we're in this thing together. We've got 250,000 souls within the umbrella of our responsibility that this church is going to stand before God, and we got to answer for what we've done. We don't have time to have a serve me attitude toward one another. We've got to love, we've got to forgive, and we've got to commit. You want unity in the church? You need to pray, Lord, change me this month until I can get an attitude where it first comes out of my heart and then it flows through my hands, where I am ministering to the needs of others. Both the hand and the heart of a servant. Still the spoken, gave hope. After a life of servanthood, he still had attitude. Go to the garden. Father, don't serve. Sins from 4,000 been rolled up. So that this boy. Joseph, Jacob, 10 brothers. Joseph knew those brothers. Jacob knew those brothers definitely. Dad looks at Joe and says, Tony, Joseph, knowing he was moving in an environment of hostility. Yes. Come on, Dad. For me? They don't hate me. You're going to send me to a hostile environment to serve men that hate me? Christ is willing to come down to a hostile environment, surround himself by men that hated him, serve him. Joseph left home that day with his backpack full of provisions, knowing he was walking into a hostile environment to serve men who hated him. What about the attitude? But you know, he got there and took him and wanted to kill him and throw him in a pit. Told his brother and threw him in the pit while they had another powwow what to do with him. And then they took him out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And off down the road they saw him disappear in the dust. And there was left with this coat of many colors that represented the love of the Father to the Son. And so they took that coat, they killed a kid of the goats, and they dumped the coat down in the blood, and then they come back home. And they bring the coat covered with blood to Dad. Dad, we found this coat out in the field. You recognize it? Jacob begin to off his Watch my title. My title is The Heart is Revealed. You see, in Father's house, the brothers learned how to act. When they came to Father's house, they knew. Oh, wish I had the energy to preach about 5 minutes here. When they came to Father's house, they knew when to cry. When they came to Father's house, they knew when to weep. When they came to Father's house, they knew how to act. And while they were in Father's house, they were around their dad crying and carrying on and weeping and mourning and all the stuff that they knew the Father wanted them to do. Tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, it's not real hard to come into an atmosphere like this and clap your hands and lift your hands and say, I love you, Jesus, because we have become professional Pentecostals that know how to act in the Father's house. Would somebody help me preach 10 minutes? Would you just help me preach 10 minutes? I said, we've learned how to act in the Father's house. Come on, Brother Long, here's what we do for this service today. So worship, we want people so tear jerkers. We know how to. On me. Come on, it's Sunday morning, so we know which side of the closet to get our clothes out of, and we know exactly how to dress up. We know what to wear to make the preacher think everything's okay. And we all the time we know hidden the other side of the closet and in the bottom drawer of the dresser is stuff we're going to wear in the field. But in Father's house, we learn how to act. We know when to clap our hands, and we know when to stand. We know when to jump up and say, yes, Pastor, you're doing good, because we're trying to impress the Father. The Father's house, they knew how to act. But when they got to the field, heart was revealed. He was when they got away from the Father, but it was just the boy. Feel what was really in their heart. There was no father to impress. There was no father to stop them. There was no pastor there to say, no. There was no youth pastor to say, no, you know this is not where we ought to be going. There was no parents there to say, now this is curfew time. Now come on. I'm talking about in the field. Is when your heart's going to be revealed. It's not how you dress on Sunday afternoon. It's how you dress Thursday afternoon on your way to work. It's not how you look Sunday morning. It's how you look Tuesday morning when you're headed off to school. I'm telling you, it's in the field that the heart is revealed. Is there anybody here today that wants God to change you until you can be genuine? Not only in the Father's house, but in the field. Really, God revealed not in the field in who you are to do.
apostle of Jesus Christ, an ambassador of the gospel, commissioned by Christ and empowered with miraculous power. I want everybody that reads this letter to know that I am commissioned of Christ and miraculously empowered. That about him. All about him. Attitude. I added. I changed that bit today. Leave this. And all about them. Not my attitude as a child. Attitude. We walk in. All about. Walk out there.